So, welcome back, everyone, to the podcast, Dear Body, I'm Listening. Again, I'm Donna Piper, and today I'm joined with Leslyn Keith. I'm so excited to have her here. She is a certified lymphedema therapist with a clinical doctorate in occupational therapy, emphasizing lymphedema and obesity. She has treated lymphatic and fat disorders for over 25 years and conducts research, consults, and lectures on lymphedema, lipedema, and obesity nationally and internationally. So I am so excited that she's here today because I've met her through her online community, which she directs as the Lymphatic Lifestyle Solutions, and that's for weight management and lymphedema. And her major focus in that group and why I joined is the ketogenic diet, like looking at diet and how it affects and can help fat disorders like mine, lipedema, and subsequently helps other things that I have like mast cell, chronic fatigue, EDS, and POTS. So welcome, Leslyn. And is there anything you would like to say? Is there anything you would want to say about who you are? Anything that I missed?
Thank you so much for having me, Donna. It's been a pleasure working with you in all the various places that we have come across each other. And you have just a wealth of knowledge yourself because you spent so much time trying to listen to your body and figure out what it needs. And it's just been a pleasure working with you and trying to figure out what would be good things for your situation. We've come across a few.
Yes.
It's been an interesting journey, and I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. And like I said, like food is one of those things where for everyone has an opinion on food, I think. Just it's a charge, it's what we need to survive, right? And then when you come across complications in your health, and like me, I was on a diet or a cleanse for 40 years because I was trying to figure out why my body didn't respond. So then once I got my lipedema and mast cell diagnosis from Dr. Eicher, as she gave me the Swiss Institute histamine intolerance thing, and basically everything I was eating was like making me sick. So then I searched high and low and I found you, and it was about ketogenics and lipedema because that was in addition to the histamine, the lipedema is the one that I'm more concerned about because it can create volume with who knows why. I mean, I'm sure you know more than I do about the science of that, but still, I wanted to make sure my food, what I could eat, was servicing the body that I had with all these
Great.
conditions. So,
Yes, well put.
so I would really love to start with that. Like you have dedicated most of your career or all your career to lymphatic disorders like lymphedema and lipedema. But what first drew you to this work, and how did keto become part of your clinical focus and just your lifestyle?
Yeah. I started out treating lymphedema. I took a lymphedema certification course and I started treating it. I just loved the work because it was so concrete. Someone came into my office, their arm or their leg was, this big, and then we treated and then it became this big. I mean, it was very obvious that we were having an effect, we were doing a good job. But then gradually, more and more of my patients were coming with obesity. More and more of my patients were coming with lipedema, which is sometimes confused with obesity and or lymphedema. And so I was seeing a larger population of those people, and it wasn't working so well. The standard things that we did for lymphedema when I was working on lipedema or obesity didn't seem to have as much of an effect, so doing our massage, our compression wrapping, doing our exercise, it would do a little bit, but it just didn't do the job. And at the same time, one of my patients, she said, this is an interesting book, take a look at it. And it was Gary Taub's Why We Get Fat. And that doesn't seem to apply to me at all. And so I just left it there for months and months. Finally read it And that was the turning point, because he talked about that it's not eat less, move more for anybody. I mean, especially not for lipedema. But that wasn't the reason why people were putting on pounds as they aged. And I came to believe that this was pretty central for lipedema as well. And during that time, I also became aware that when someone had lymphedema, and that's a collection of fluid, usually secondary to cancer treatment, you have that fluid, it quickly became not just fluid, it also became fat. And whether or not they were overweight or had any issues with that at all, that area in their body that had chronic swelling developed, it started getting fat in there too. And so you can massage and squeeze that all you want, but it's not going to get smaller. Fat doesn't get out of there that way. So I really thought, okay, I got to do something to help with my patients who have obesity. Got to do something that's going to help with lipedema. I got to do something that's going to help with the fat that is trapped in these arms and legs of people that have lymphedema. And so I started researching more of what Gary Taubes was saying in his book, Why We Get Fat. And it seemed to be that all the carbohydrates that we eat. And so on that premise, I said, okay, I'll do it myself. I'll make sure that this is, a satisfying way to eat. And then on that premise, I said, well, let's see if any of my patients want to do it. And a few did. And months later, they would come back and say, hey, it worked. and we had no idea what we were doing. We just said, stop eating bread and potatoes. Let's see what happens. So it was very informal at that place, but they said it seems to work. And so I specifically went to get my doctorate so I could have a university that would back me up to do a study. I didn't know how else to do a study. And I should tell everybody who's listening, this is absolutely the wrong way to go about doing a study. You don't go with deciding what you already want to prove and stuff. You should do research to find out what happens. So this was not right, but this is what I did because I was so excited about the prospect that it seemed to be working for some of my patients. So I did a small pilot study where I got a group of my patients, some of whom had lipedema, but not formally diagnosed, because as you know, it's very hard to get a diagnosis, but I knew that they probably had lipedema. So we had started out with 12 patients who had a difficulty with their weight and couldn't manage their lymphedema or lipedema. And so they wanted to be in this lifestyle group with me. And so out of the 12 sessions, I think 8 of them focused just on ketogenic diet. Because that's the hardest thing for people to do, is adopt dietary change. Then we had a couple of sessions on sleep, on stress management, on physical activity, but the main bulk was really focused on ketogenic diet. And the ones that decided to change how they ate, it worked. It worked so well for those that it pulled the averages up for the entire group. So we ended up with 10 people finishing and 6 people used the diet, and they did so well that even though the 4 who didn't use the diet didn't do much, it made the average for the entire group be significant. So I thought, okay, this is it. I found a way that people can lose weight and therefore their lymphedema and their lipedema get better. Because I was all about, it must be that we just need a way for the fluid to be able to travel better because we've lost weight. Well, Donna, what was so exciting, what I found out after probably a decade of trying this with people, it is way more than that. And it's just what you're finding out with how it works with mast cell and other conditions that you have. There's something that is inflammatory about a high carbohydrate diet, and it's particularly inflammatory to the lymphatics. So they don't work as well. So now you get more pain and you get blocked up fluid and all this kind of stuff when you're eating a diet that's high in carbohydrate. And there is something particularly healing about healthy dietary fat. And so those two things work on the lymphatic system, whether you lose any weight or not. By eating this way, your lymphatics work better and you feel better and your conditions are better managed. In the research they're doing right now with lipedema and ketogenic diets, they're finding that they have good outcomes before they lose any weight, before they lose any fat. So that's why I really come to believe it's way more than just weight that we're dealing with. It's way more than getting this excess fat. That is certainly beneficial. But just this, as my partner, Robert Erkston, says,
Oh,
feel better more often. We just want to feel better more often.
that's so true. And so a couple of things that you said, even with people that don't have lipedema, that isn't the fat disorder, if they have lymphedema, saying those words over and over again, they still would, because the swelling and the fluid collects in that area, that would turn to fat. It would it would kind of bring it in.
Yes, it would encourage fat growth in that area. So pretty soon you have more fat trapped in your arm or your leg than you have fluid.
Oh, so interesting. And then full circle back to what you're saying about because lipedema is one of the harder ones. Obviously, we're dealing with fat. You can't squeeze it out, which so many times I wish you could. I wish you could be a massage or around and be like, okay, push it through. That's not the reality. But having the fat, so the low carbs or no carbs and healthy fats heal the system because, for all of my things and all the research, and you probably know this better, for whatever reason, why my lymphatic system stopped working as well, that created or helped create or helped exacerbate all the other conditions I have. So are they seeing that the healing part is this really does heal the lymphatics first, which you really need to kind of help even bring the fat out, right?
Yes. And this is one thing that we were noticing, that some people would notice an immediate response on the scale, but many people wouldn't. And it's hard to keep doing a dietary plan if you're not seeing that number go down. And so what we try to impress upon people is that you got to heal first, then the pounds come off. And so we try to encourage people having multiple ways of seeing that things are different. What's your energy level? What's your skin feel like? What's your hair and your nails? What are they like? How are your clothes fitting? We had this one woman who sent in a picture of herself 30 days of doing a ketogenic diet, and obviously slimmer. Has lipedema and she's obviously slimmer after 30 days. She said the scale looked exactly the same. No change on the scale. So her body composition was changing, her pain was less, her energy level was better. And so it's got to be about all those other non-scale victories, which we call, that are telling you that you are healing and you're doing better. For a lot of people, that pain reduction or resolution is the ultimate motivator, because they go into it thinking, I just want the scale to go down. But if in 2 weeks they have a lot less pain, well, I'm going to stick with this way of eating just because of that, because that's huge.
Yes, that's definitely what I noticed is, walking, ambulatory issues of the progression. If I can control the progression, great. If not, but really to be able to walk and to have less pain with lipedema was really my motivating factor. And I am, as you know, an undereater because of the lipedema. That is a general, not everyone has that, but I tend to not have my hungry sensations, whatever that is. I don't have a good read on that. So having a diet that I know is going to help heal me and
Mhm,
kind of motivates me to eat a little bit more as like not just my hunger sensation. So
mhm,
that
mhm,
is definitely like a good
mhm.
factor. And I even went down because the cross section from mast cell histamine stuff to keto was so low. We talked about it and I went to a carnivore diet
Yeah,
mainly. And
yeah,
every
and
once
it
in a while now
definitely,
I
yeah,
have it.
there
Do you
there
want to talk
are.
about that or
Yes, and carnivore is basically, I mean, it's animal sourced foods and almost exclusively. I mean, if you're able to, some people will have a few plants here and there, but almost exclusively animal sourced. And the thing about that and mast cell activation syndrome is that and histamine, stuff like that, plants tend to be a higher source of those things. You can get it from animal source foods, but it has to do with their preparation. And so, or your storage method. And so, as long as you avoid slow cooked, if you avoid, and this is really handy for a lot of people, but you avoid that batch cooking and then you put it in the refrigerator and save it for, to eat during the week. It's that those leftovers tend to be higher histamine. And so, going to a more of an animal sourced diet, eliminating all the inflammatory chemicals that are in those plants, and then just you can't have leftovers. You're gonna just cook your steak 10 minutes on the side and eat it, and then you're done. Then you can see a difference in your symptoms from in mast cell and if you have difficulty with those high histamine foods. So I just think that this way of eating, it does seem to address many of the needs of that person that has these multiple conditions. I have a paper that I'm working on with Siobhan Huggins and Carrie Reedy, a medical nutritionist in Australia. And we're putting together a paper about guidelines of eating a ketogenic diet or a carbohydrate restricted diet when you have lipedema, considering all the person's comorbidities. So
oh,
if you have mast cell or if you have hypothyroidism or you have congestive heart failure, or you have, any variety. I mean, people don't come with just lipedema, right? So now, how do I adjust my diet that's going to be health promoting for all of all of me? They're all together, for my depression and, all these various things. And it turns out that using a keto or carnivore diet is the easiest to modify to accommodate each of those individual needs due to your comorbidities, due to your preferences, just what you like to eat. All those things, we can do this in a way that is going to promote your health.
that is really amazing. So when is that? You're working on it right now? That
It's been submitted. It's in the review process. And
okay.
so we hope that it is going to be out soon. One of the authors, Carrie Reedy, has been accepted to speak at a lipedema conference in Australia in August. And she's going to be talking about our paper. So we hope that it is published at that time. So yes, very excited about that.
Well, let me know so I could update the links too, because that is to have a source like that, because it is complicated. Like even if you have lipedema, maybe you do have like the obesity component, and maybe you're opposite. Like you didn't know you had lipedema until you lost weight or went in some
Yes,
GLP ones
yes,
and that
yes.
way.
Mhm.
Um, I want to talk about, if you can, if you like, whatever you want to say about it, but is there any research or what have you seen anecdotally between proteins and how proteins help the lymphatic system or support or just getting more protein in your diet, support all these conditions that we have? Is
Yes, yeah. Excellent, excellent point. And interestingly, another person who's going to be presenting and in Australia, the keynote speaker, matter of fact, is Dr. Gabrielle Ferber. And she's been treating lipedema in her clinic in Germany using what she calls a protein optimized ketogenic diet. She finds that many of her patients have been using more of a plant-sourced way of eating, usually restricting their calories, restricting their fat. And there has been some research that shows that women with lipedema tend to have reduced lean mass. And so she really felt like the protein needed to be emphasized for this population. And so she makes sure that they have plenty of protein in their diet. She does it depending on their body mass index and stuff like that. She figures out how many grams of protein they should be having on average per day. And it's very necessary for that one thing, maintain their muscle mass and hopefully even building it up. I think there was a concern that eating too much protein, that if you have excess protein, that through the body process called gluconeogenesis, that you would convert that protein you ate into sugar, and now you would not lose fat because you would be eating too much sugar and causing an insulin response. And it turns out that is not true. Your body does not store or convert protein. It all depends on what you need. And so if you're eating some protein, it uses it or it excretes it. So you don't convert it to sugars and have any way of storing it. Now, carbohydrates and fat, you can store that because your body says, I'm going to need energy in the future. So you ate all this energy and I can't use it right now. So I'm going to save it for later. So those things will be stored. But if you eat excess protein, and it's pretty satiating, so you typically don't eat excess. But if you do, then you're just going to excrete the excess. So for anybody out there who's listening, if you want to, one thing that I would say is prioritize protein, as Dr. Ben Bickman says. That is, and he gives us great 3 rules that can help you if you're trying to adopt having a diet that has less carbohydrates in it. 1 is prioritize proteins, just as you're saying. And 2 is control your carbs. And for some people that may be like yourself, trying to go down to 0 on a carnivore diet, but other people it may be just, cutting their intake in half, see what works for you. And then the last one is fill in with fat. There was a misconception that we had to, every ketogenic diet was the same. And we had to use the model that we used to treat epilepsy. In the turn of the last century, in the early 1900s, before there was medications, they used the ketogenic diet, and they had very, very low carbohydrates, but they had 80% of calories were coming from fat. And they're usually not from good sources. So you're talking about those highly processed seed oils and things like that. That's how they were giving these children usually their fat. And so they didn't have very much protein at all. So it was mostly a fat diet. It controlled the seizures, but it probably caused deficiencies and other health issues because it wasn't a good source of fat and they didn't have enough protein. And so now we're finding with other conditions like lipedema, like mast cell activation syndrome, perhaps EDS, although there hasn't been a lot of research in that area, that we don't need it to be 80% fat. The reason the ketogenic diet gets its name is because you're generating ketones as a source of energy by your diet. You're not eating glucose or sugar or carbs, right? So you're using fat turning into ketones to give yourself energy. And so when you have generated a lot of ketones, you're said to be in ketosis. And the theory for epilepsy was maintaining a level of ketosis, constantly generating those ketones, kept the seizures from happening. But do we need to be in a constant state of ketosis for lipedema, for instance? Probably not. To fight obesity? Probably not. We can probably go in and out of ketosis, so we don't need that 80% fat. Some people may only have 40 or 50% of fat with their their diet, more than they typically would in a standard American diet. They're probably having 20 to 25% of fat. So just increasing it a little bit up to 40 or 50 may help you meet your goals. You don't necessarily have to go up to that 80% fat. Now, people who are on a carnivore diet they're only having protein and fat. And that is sometimes the hard thing to figure out. What is the best thing for me? Should I have more protein or should I have more fat? And sometimes it takes a little bit of experimentation to see what you feel best on.
Yeah, I think definitely what kinds of fat, like is it butter or tallow or what kind, what kind of fat, and also where does it optimize? But I definitely think there's a stage of healing. I know for myself and anecdotally from is that higher fat at the beginning does help whatever the body is deficient in, for whatever, you'll know the
Yes.
science behind that,
Yes.
but it does seem to be, fat seems to be healing. And then protein definitely is necessary, because I came from, like, I was a vegetarian since I was 13, and all these years I was doing all these things that were very healthy, and I moved, I did marathons, I did all that stuff, and I still ended up with all of these things.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the interesting thing out there in the world, if anyone's listening, is that sometimes your body is missing, like, the thing that you like, it's more trendy to be plant-based. I mean, I was vegetarian for all the years when I went to, like, the small random health food store that had that interesting smell. If you've ever been to one in the
Yes.
80s where they
Yes.
were small, like you made your own stuff. And there is
Yeah.
something good about making your own things, but it's what you're eating. What I found is definitely focusing on protein to help all of you'll know all the science, but just as a layman, focusing on protein and then eating fat. There was a point where my body was craving more fat because I was, a teenager in the 80s and up. So fat was bad, everything low fat, fat was the enemy, like fat would make you fat.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is really not true. And if you have anything you would like to say about fats and the benefit, like to
Yeah.
dispel kind of this thing,
Yeah.
even that you were inundated with, like, low fat was like
Yes.
really kind of the worst thing for hormones and all those things.
Yes. And I think it's quite a disservice that we have the same word for body fat as what we eat in dietary fat, because I think it's very easy to come to that conclusion that if I eat fat, it will make me become more fat. And it's simply not true. It is the carbohydrates that get turned into fat in your body. And if you're eating a high carbohydrate and a high fat diet, think, those sugary desserts and stuff like that, they have lots of fat and lots of sugar in them, then you're going to be storing all that. But if you take away one energy source, all that sugar that you're eating, all that starch that you're eating, if you take away that, then your body has to use the fat that you're eating and your stored body fat for energy. So, and also when you eat lots of fat and you don't eat lots of carbs, your body starts saying, oh, life is plentiful. It's safe. It's safe for me to rev up my metabolism and start having things burn hotter, and start having more energy, because I know there is plenty of food. Before I was in this famine situation, when I was eating a super low calorie, hardly any food, no fat, that was, almost starvation. And your body had to protect itself. It didn't just lower its metabolism for no good reason. It was a logical response to not having enough resources. So it hunkered down and used less energy because less energy was coming in. So I would think about those types of fat that are acceptable to you, that you like the taste of, that you feel good about eating. Most people are fine with butter, for instance, and start with that. and try to remove the bad fats from your diet. And that would be like the fake fats, like margarine, like when they make oil out of a seed and they have to heat it up a whole lot, they have to add a bunch of chemicals to it. So you're talking about a highly processed, not a fresh type of olive oil or something where you just squeeze the olive and you get the oil out of it. You just squeeze the coconut, or you squeeze the avocado and you get oil. But no, these little hard seeds, in order to produce the oil, it's industrialized. It's lubricant. It is not human food. And what they're finding out now is that it creates inflammation. And when you're talking about having a chronic condition that is probably a highly inflammatory state, you're just feeding that inflammation. So, so find those fats you like, hopefully some from animal sources as well as from plant sources. You know, if you enjoy bacon, if you enjoy a certain type of meat, eating the fat that comes along with that meat, a fatty fish, eggs. Eggs are wonderful. The yolk is all fat. So, you know, find those things that you enjoy. And make sure you have I don't think you need any plant sources at all, but you can definitely have a mixed source of plant and animal sources of fat that are going to be healing for you, and they're going to taste good.
Yeah, that is definitely the good mix. And I want to talk about you mentioned the inflammation, and I wanted to talk a little bit more. If someone's out there listening and they're like, "Well, I'm not really sure. Doctors aren't my thing, or they haven't had the best, relationship with them because you come in saying one thing and they're like, "Oh, no, you're fine." How does someone know about if their lymphatics are a little sluggish? I know you've wrote a couple books.
Mhm.
The lymphatic code, correct? Correct.
Yes.
And I know you're writing a few more books about
Mhm.
things,
Mhm.
but just as someone that doesn't really know about any of that stuff that could be listening, how would you know that your lymphatics are maybe sluggish, or that your body is inflamed, if your symptoms aren't so severe that you feel like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me? But is there any signs
Yeah.
or
The most obvious that people will see is swelling.
okay.
And it might be swelling that just appears at the end of the day, or when it's really hot, or when you've been standing a lot and not moving. Or it might be swelling that is just always there. The ankles are always swollen. You know, they have parts of your body are just, it's chronically swollen. That's the most obvious one. But there's a lot of not so obvious. Dr. Stanley Roxon, who's really a big researcher in the lymphatic field, he said at a conference a couple of years ago, he said, pretty soon people are going to be treating every kind of condition by treating the lymphatics, because the lymphatics are involved in every system, every organ in your body. And so we'll treat heart conditions by treating the lymphatics. So when the lymphatics are not working well, the heart cannot work very well. You'll be treating gastrointestinal issues by treating the lymphatics. They're finding out in things like Crohn's disease and colitis that the lymphatics, which take nutrients out of your intestine, the lymphatics are inflamed. They're not working so well. So we get stuff moving the wrong way. And then you get GI symptoms. So every system in your body, if you have problems with your kidneys, that could be helped by helping your lymphatics. If you have problems with liver function, it could be helped by helping your lymphatics. And I think the first line to help your lymphatic system function better is something that you do every day, and probably several times a day, is you eat. And so you're going to try to eat things that are going to be supportive to your lymphatics and not inflammatory to your lymphatics.
That is such a great thing, because I was thinking, I know you gave some really good tips about, where to start, up your protein, look at your carbs and try to lessen them, and then add some fat that's good. And even
Yeah.
if you want to just give yourself a self experiment out there, is like, let's see, I'm not sure about with my how inflamed, or I do have swelling at the end of the day, and I thought that was just normal. And if it's not normal to
Mhm.
what I'm hearing, it's not normal to have swelling at the end of the day,
Yeah.
is to play around with your food sources a little bit to
Mhm.
find a way to eat more protein, eat more
Yeah.
healthy fats, and reduce the things that, we all know isn't like anything highly processed and sugar,
Mhm.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, people can start with just like no longer having sugar sodas. You can start with saying, okay, I'm not going to have any, no bread, no baked goods. Just, I'm going to start with that. The only thing I would caution people is that, we're talking with about someone who has multiple conditions, probably is taking multiple medications. And, there is an issue with you need to have a medical provider who is monitoring you and is going to de-prescribe your medications. Because what happens is that as you become healthier, if you continue on that same dose of medication, you are over medicated. So you're on that medication that is bringing your blood pressure down because it's too high. And now you eat in a way that is bringing your blood pressure down. And now you're still taking the medication and it takes it really down. So I have a resource for you, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. These are people mostly in the US they're all healthcare practitioners, many of whom they all use carbohydrate restriction or ketogenic diets in their practice. And the ones that are physicians can monitor you and de-prescribe your medication as needed. People are using this way of eating for chronic mental illness, that people who have been depressed their whole life, people who have schizophrenia, people, serious mental illnesses, they're using this way of eating. You got to bet that they got that the medication they're taking for those psychiatric illnesses, that's got to be adjusted right away. So that's why I caution people that for some people to just start changing their diet right away without having anybody to monitor them could be, you can run into trouble with that. The typical person who is not on any medications, you can see what works for me. Should I go straight to carnivore, which I think is delicious? Or do I want to just play around with and just cut out? I think I started with bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes. I cut out those four things, as a way to gradually go into it.
And then, and how long have you been eating this way? And how long did it take you? Did you miss those things when you did it? Was it
Mhm.
hard, or, was it like,
And so I've never been what people call a foodie, I'm never, I'm never into cooking, so for me, it wasn't a difficult thing, but I still needed to do it myself before I could help a patient who wanted to do this way of eating. So I had to at least see what it was like. Now, I have experimented with not having some things that are definitely on a ketogenic diet that I love. Like I love dairy. Okay. What would it be like for me to not have any dairy? And I could do it. I could stick to it. It wasn't fun. It wasn't pleasurable, but it was an interesting experiment to do that because at least I could see as many of my patients, what they had to cut out was something that was not on a ketogenic diet. And it was very hard I mean, just the thought of going the rest of your life without X, whatever that favorite carb food is daunting. And so I wanted to experience that. And I did. I definitely did. I love my dairy. I want to have every kind of dairy and I want to have it every day. So that was hard. So I think it's something that for a lot of people, it can be a short period of time, maybe up to a month. And once you get past that, then it's not bad. But it's kind of like if you continue having that one cigarette a day, that craving stays alive and it never leaves you, right? I've known people who are a sober alcoholic. It's it's still alive, that urge to want to have a drink. I think partly because they've now changed to sugar, and that it's kind of that same mechanism that's feeding it. So if you have a little bit of that thing that is not good for you, it really makes it difficult um, to avoid temptations because that craving is still so alive. Yeah.
That's such a good point because it's true, because it's just because you have just enough of it and you think like, "Oh, it's just a little," but it's actually once you kinda let it go and then see what it's like to adjust without it,
Mhm.
it's easier to adjust, like and you're like, "Oh, I just don't even have it anymore," and
Mhm.
that makes sense. I
Mhm.
mean, all of these things are, in my opinion, and you probably see it with all of your patients too, it's a difficult illness. I mean, there's probably harder illnesses like cancer and things like that, but because it's affects your daily life
Yes.
and it is not so obvious that you're sick and it's not
Yes.
so obvious. So all of these things, and then trying to figure out all of the different ideas or finding a doctor that will
Mhm.
listen to you to prescribe things and being
Mhm.
a self experiment when you don't have
Mhm.
any energy or you have brain
Mhm.
fog like me, like
Mhm.
all these things. It's
Yes.
very daunting and can be overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I love that you
And
make it very simple.
it's daunting because of how people treat you too, and how they perceive you. Someone who has lipedema is it's seen by most people as obesity, and therefore your fault, because most people see obesity, and this is totally wrong. They see obesity as a lifestyle, poor willpower, and it is your fault that you're there. And now, say you're someone with lipedema you're not obese, you figured out about a ketogenic diet, you go in the grocery store and you buy a gallon of cream and a whole bunch of steaks, and you're in line getting those groceries, and everybody is looking at you with that anti-fat bias. They're looking at you that see, there she is, she's doing it to herself, I can tell by looking at her cart. And that's so it's another thing that makes it hard to do this way of eating because of that bias that's out there.
100%. And I'm really glad that you're saying that to put a voice to it because it is actually the truth of it with the research that you've done, the clients that you have, if you experiment on yourself, that you know that's actually more healing to your body and
Uh-huh.
does all these other unseen things like helps your lymphatics, helps your inflammation, helps like your mood and everything. Like
Yes.
there's so many things to
Yes.
and increases your energy
Uh-huh.
that is a true bias that you just also have to get. It's like another hurdle to get
Uh-huh.
over.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you talk about that you have a problem with brain fog. Now you're in this group and you want to do this way of eating. It's hard because of your brain fog.
yes.
So you do this way of eating because one thing it's gonna help is your brain fog. But until you get there, it's hard to understand, okay, minute to minute, what am I supposed to be doing? So
It's so true. Like that's why your
yes,
group is like a lifeline for me because I have all this information and then I just couldn't retain it. It just didn't make sense. And like
yes.
not that I had those capacities before, but it was like, okay, so why do I wanna be in ketosis? How does that happen? Like, and
Yeah,
what do I need
yeah,
to eat? And it seems very basic, but I think when
yes,
you're trying to figure this out and you have limited energy, especially if you're like me, you can't batch cook. So what can I cook with my
yes,
energy? And it's
yes.
beautiful to have your group that you could talk about that stuff and you can like, oh yeah, I think I probably asked the question last month or our last session, but then it kind of clicks
Yes,
because you
yes,
do need that support about food
yes.
and that you're so knowledgeable and you have such a passion for it. And that is another thing I really love about you is not just about the lymphatics and it's such an important under like researched or looked at or educated way, like
Mhm, mhm.
system. But then you also look at a very practical thing that you could do to heal it with what you put in your mouth, because we have to feed ourselves every day. So that you're
Mhm.
so passionate about both, it's like the like most perfect marriage with
Oh,
someone going through chronic illnesses. So anyone
yes.
out there, I highly recommend to find Leslyn at what
Mhm.
in whatever capacity you can, to be with her, and I'll leave her links below. But I really appreciate all your time. I could talk to you about 10 other topics, which I think I have
I know.
listed, but the one thing I really would like to ask you to end with, and um I know for me, if I would have known that lipedema was a thing, like when I was 15, how I viewed my body and how I kind of viewed dieting or not dieting, all of those things would have been different even 10 years ago. So, is there anything in that you would like to share um, that you wish you knew sooner, or one like kind of light bulb moment that, like, oh gosh, if I had that if I would have known that, things would have been different, not to go back and to like, woe is me, but to help anyone else on this
Yes.
journey that could like
Yes.
get that information now and doesn't have to wait
Yes.
10 years to figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I wish I knew when I first started my lymphatic practice was that it's not all about obesity. It's not all about weight. It is about giving your body the nutrients it needs to be healthy. And when I first started looking into this way of eating, I looked at what's the best way for people to lose weight. I was not thinking about what is the most healthy for the lymphatic system, what's the most healthy for the person. Because I've had some of my patients using this way of eating that didn't need to lose weight, and they found their lymphedema went down. They didn't, it's not like they lost a bunch of weight and the lymphedema went down. They lost maybe 2 pounds and the lymphedema went down a lot. So I wish that I had known it was all about eating a healthy diet. And unfortunately, it's not the diet that we were told is healthy.
Yes. I mean, and that right there is that main thing, not the diet that we're told. And really, having to with everything else you need to kind of go through with all these disorders, and being in the medical profession and education that way is to it's not fringe, like it's just a fad. It's a natural way of eating, and
Yes.
really to kind of get the word out there. It's not what you think it is. It's
Mhm.
not the fat, like all that stuff that I still have in my head, the fat makes you fat, or the fat's gonna make
Mhm.
you heart attack. It's actually
Right.
the protein and the fat are what your body needs in order to be healthy, in order to have this lymphatic system, which basically is your drainage system, correct?
And it's your immune system, and it's your fluid balance system, and the lymphatic system is so integral to your health. So it has many jobs besides waste removal, which is important, but it really is the basis to a healthy life. Yes.
Well, beautiful, and you just gave some or so much information, but some basic, like just changing your diet a little bit. We'll have that resource if you have our medication, so that doesn't interfere with your medication. But changing your diet enough to support the inflammation that goes down to support the lymphatics,
Mhm.
that will make you healthy, which is
Yes.
like what a huge gift right there. So, Leslyn, I know you have a lot of projects going on. I'm really excited for all of them. Um, You've already written 2 books, and I think you're an editor on the next book. Can you tell us anything about the books coming out, or anything you'd like to say about this
Sure.
project?
So we have a textbook on lipedema coming out. I'm one of 3 editors with Dr. Stanley Roxon and Dr. Catherine Seo. The 3 of us are editing this textbook on lipedema, principles and practice of diagnosis and treatment. This is going to be probably one of the textbooks that every physician should have in their office, because it has all the information about diagnosing and treating lipedema properly. It talks about surgery, it talks about nutritional intervention, it talks about conservative therapies. It talks about the genetics of lipedema. So all this stuff is in there, and we have authors from around the world. These are expert clinicians and researchers from around the world: Italy, Australia, Germany, Poland. All of these authors are coming together to contribute to this book. I think there's almost 30 authors. So it is available for pre-order on Amazon. It will be coming out this fall. So be looking for that, and it's something you're going to want your physician to have.
And I also think there's probably going to be a ketogenic prescription for diet, I'm hoping, in there. Or
So in one of the chapters done by Dr. Gabrielle Farber talks about using a protein optimized ketogenic diet. So she will be showing how to do that in there. And then in addition to that, I've submitted a paper with two colleagues, Carrie Reedy and Siobhan Huggins, and we are talking about using a ketogenic diet or carbohydrate restricted diet, modified, individualized for each person and how they present. So that is going to be guidelines also for a clinician to use to help a patient, given how they're present, what is going to be the best way for them to adopt what way of eating.
oh my gosh, I love it. So pre-order the Amazon for the textbook, and then look for this other paper. And
I'll
then
send you a link when the paper comes out. Yes.
yes, and hopefully no one ever has to hear any calories in, calories out nonsense. So
Right.
thank you so much
Right.
for writing these and editing them, and we can't wait. So the link will be below for anyone that could pre-order. And I believe there's going to be a companion to the textbook too. Also, as a patient, you can bring to your physician and give you some helpful tips to navigate all this. So thank you again so much for joining me today, and you gave so much great information. And is there any final words or anything you'd like to say?
I think we said it all, but like you said, we could keep talking forever on this. It was wonderful being here, Donna, and I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much.